Hey, I like that. I like that preview pick.
Thanks, man. Yeah. How
Nice. Oh,
are
this does make a difference. Wow.
you?
I wonder why you don't want to do it by phone. This is impressive.
Yeah, this really, it's convenient that this is what I sell, which is solutions
Yeah.
for this kind of setup on Zoom. So, of course, yeah,
Nice.
I always want to make sure I can show that off as often as I can.
I feel maybe I should record this as a podcast. We could just maybe take clips from our meeting.
Heck, why not,
Why
man?
not?
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right.
Let's
Cool.
see. Yeah. Can I record on my end too?
Yeah, I bet you can.
Let's see. Send request. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Dynamite.
Recording on my end and on yours.
Sick. Dude, great to meet you. How are you?
You too. Doing good.
Trying to remember, was it through JR that we got connected, James Robert?
James Robert Lay. Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Digital growth.
Fantastic. Yeah,
He hooked
he's
us up. And I'm a noob.
yeah, he's
I'm
been a
very
great
new to
connector.
podcasting. I'm super new to
Oh yeah?
podcasting. And I've known him for years. We did a lot of
Okay.
websites for him a long time ago. And I started this
Yeah.
podcast called OnSolos not too long ago. And back in September, but I've been like yet to release them. Just the releases have been slow. I've been getting gummed up.
Sure.
I'm real new at all this. So I love doing the actual recordings of these. However, I've been getting overwhelmed doing the production, everything else. At first, I did have someone producing them for me, but since then,
Yeah.
I've been doing them on my own. So now it's overwhelming. So they're just backing up.
It's a lot to manage,
I
man.
have to,
Yeah,
well, getting in
absolutely.
Descript. I've been using Descript to edit. If I do them on Zoom, I get into Descript to edit them, or sometimes I'll just send a link right off the bat to do Riverside. So I'm just all over the map, and I'm just totally an amateur at this and learning the ropes. So when I talked to JR, he showed me his setup. I was like, it was almost like getting on with you just now. I was like, holy cow, you just did the camera switch, everything else. And he mentioned you as the guy who showed him the ropes. And now I could see why when you got on. I'm like, oh, you have the same kind of like getting on a Zoom call with you is like getting on a podcast. So I just said, no, let's just do this as a podcast.
Yeah, no, dude, all about it. Yeah, man. Yeah, with that in mind, if this is a podcast, not just a meeting, would it make sense to have me introduce myself real quick?
Yeah, do it.
A little background.
Go for it.
Awesome. Yeah. So as I'm Ryan Graham's Studio Upgrade, and I've been creating video content for the last 2 decades. And since the lockdown, though, there's this big transition. Of course, everybody had a big pivot. My big pivot was all my event video work had got canceled, right? It went away. And so I started designing and building solutions for people who needed to show up in Zoom calls. Suddenly, of course, I'm sure you remember 2020, we were all needing to use Zoom out of necessity. And there was plenty of people who were looking to do it on a more professional level. So I started designing solutions. I have some pre-built kits and a bunch of different other things that made it easier to show up, professionally in virtual interactions. And since then, it's really evolved into not just Zoom meetings, but podcasts, social media content, virtual presentations, webinars, all live streams, all kinds of different ways that we're all now needing to show up in this new virtual live world, whatever it might be, right? And the solutions that I've been developing allow you to do all of those things in however you need to do it, right? So like right now, for example, we're on Zoom, right?
Yeah, I called you up
meeting
on the phone just so anyone who's watching knows. I called you up on the phone. You're like, get on Zoom. What are you doing? And I go, all right, let me get on Zoom. And just so anyone who's watching, all of these cuts that you're doing back and forth with your name popping up and your camera angles, you're doing that live on the fly. That's not editing post-production. This is all live. You can see from my window what it looks like live. I don't have any of that going on. That's why I called you today, was to learn from you on how you do it and to show me what you're doing. I've spoken to James Robert from Digital Growth Institute, and when I was on a call with him, he was doing similar stuff, like live on the fly. And it was like being on a Zoom call, but being on a very well produced, I would say even beyond a podcast from what I've been used to on podcasts, beyond a podcast level production. And you're doing it right here live. Is that stuff all behind you real?
Yeah, so this is
not a blue screen. That's real stuff.
Here, yeah, and I've got it set where I can, if I want to have a different background on here, I can change that at the push of a button. If I want to have different vibes, and I just try to have it change semi-regularly, so it's always fresh, right? It's a lot easier to change that than it is to put a different shirt on or whatever. It allows me to, and we used AI tools to generate a bunch that are on brand. So my color scheme is like orange, yellow, red, maroon. And so I have all these different on brand sort of backgrounds that I can, have that have the right vibe, but still unique. So it's been really cool to have that sort of thing. And yeah, what you were saying too, right? The way that's all works, is I've got this panel of buttons here that I can, I want to have my title come on. Yeah, I can hit a button here to have my name come on. And this is, yes, a Stream Deck, but we're running a piece of software called Companion that allows me to control a lot more than a Stream Deck typically would be able to control. So everything from, the camera angles, yes, I've got a video switcher, an A10 Mini Extreme.
I didn't even see you just push the button. You just switched. You have a top camera view.
Yeah. So here, if I show you the behind the scenes angle, whoops, let's try that again. There we go. So I've got a camera up here.
Holy cow.
That is my desk cam, if you will. And there's my shotgun microphone right here. And then I've got a teleprompter right there. And then my main wide camera is that one over there. And yeah, I'm able to just switch back and forth between all those angles. So my setup, of course, is a little more elaborate than most would need to be because I'm adding that extra element. But of course, I'm also creating a lot of content, right? So this sort of angle, right? If I'm demoing how something works, having this kind of angle, and I can zoom this in and out here as well, is really helpful when I'm trying to.
I can't do it that easily. I have to take my camera off to show you what's going on here. So there's my screen. I do have lights and stuff up there, but it's pretty basic. It's pretty basic. So I do have the room to set all that up. And I have a bunch of screens laying around here too, because I moved from a much larger office to this small office. But as you can see, my eye contact is not as good as your eye contact. I am looking at my screen and not at the camera. I saw you had an iPad or something there, which is awesome.
Yeah. I've got so many screens here. I've got this one here that I could draw on. I've got an iPad here as well that I can draw on. With the iPad, it's nice. I can just use my pencil and do whiteboarding stuff here, which is something that I need to do more of. But it's nice to be able to have that kind of functionality as well. Yeah, lots of screens, lots of toys.
You could teach me how to put to use all of my screens that I have laying around here from my old office. I have a bunch of screens, a bunch of iPads that I don't use, old stuff that's just laying around doing nothing. And it looks like you just have a way in a system to put all that together.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what I do. I've tried to find the best and most reliable and easy to use. And that's saying a lot because it is pretty complicated, all this stuff, right? But what I try to do for my clients is to not just, okay, here's all the parts, but now how do we actually make it work together and reliably, and right? Because there's a lot of wires going on down here. There's so many different
things. How did you get into this? How did you get into this?
It's a great question. Yeah, my background, as I mentioned, is in video production. But before that, man, as long as I can remember, since I could ride a bike, I remember I would take my lawn mowing money when I was a kid and I would bike to Radio Shack to buy wires and adapters. So that was like my favorite thing to do. And I was always hooking things up. Yeah. So that I think was the start of it. And then throughout my career, it's mostly been focused on video production, but I've done live theater work, the production related there. I've done lighting design work. I've done all kinds of different facets in this sort of technology stuff. I've just done a lot of like web development, graphic design, all these different areas of interest of mine over the last couple decades. And so this really has been the taking all those skills and applying them at once. You know what I mean? Because I have control over lighting. I have control over the screens. And I'm using Mac, Windows, Linux, whatever the right tool for the right job is. So it's all about understanding all the different ways to make things communicate together. And then, of course, trying to break it, trying to like, how can I make it so that every time we walk into the space, it's good to go? And there's always going to be some weird problem, but more often than not, is have you rebooted the computer yet? So
how many computers do you have running?
That's a good question. So we're actually in the middle of, we're going to update this space here a little bit to what I do for my clients now. And so what we typically have is we actually have this little case. I'll show you a picture, but it's a little case that has a Mac Mini in it. And so that's the brains, that's where the buttons get hooked into. And that also is what drives the display. So for example, let's see if is mine going up here? No, that one's not going up here yet. But we have I'll show you a photo here. So if I go to my shops, my website is studioupgrade.com. And on here, you can see a couple of our kits. And so we have this kit here, and inside this little yellow case, there's a bunch of different pieces. There's a video switcher, there's a Mac Mini, there's a little DMX lighting control box, all kinds of different things packed into this case. And so what JR has, this is before I had this kit. Man, I did James Roberts setup a couple of years ago now. And since then we've developed, because I had done these custom setups a bunch of times. It's okay, I think I've got it boiled down. So we packed it all into this case. And inside of there, yeah, is a Mac Mini that drives the buttons as well as a screen in the background like I have. So if you wanted a graphic back there on the screen behind you, you can do that as well. And then you can do some graphics that show up, some overlays and whatnot, like we have a name graphic pop up, that kind of stuff. So that's all driven by that computer. But most of the heavy video processing, the heavy lifting in a video standpoint is done on the video switcher. So yes, you need a computer, but I'm not actually using the computer for any of that processing. A lot of people are familiar with a program called OBS, which is a great piece of software, but it's also software, it's open source, and it crashes sometimes. And
no good.
I can't have that. Yeah, exactly. So I don't use OBS generally unless there's special use cases that I like to use it for. But for the most part, I don't use OBS. I do it on the switcher. So the ATEM Blackmagic design has a product called the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. It's like the longest name ever. That has 8 video inputs that we plug the cameras, we plug the computers in, we plug all these different video sources together, and then we can mix and match what they do, and then we can control it through the Mac Mini into the buttons, all that kind of stuff. So I can pre-program all the stuff that it needs.
So you rely more on hardware than software.
Oh yeah, as much as possible, having dedicated, especially on the video processing side, having dedicated hardware. And that first piece is the ATEM Mini. And you can get into an ATEM Mini for $300. The ATEM Mini Pro, which has 4 inputs, is $295. It's a great piece of hardware, especially if you're just getting started.
Nice. So if someone getting started would just do an A10 Mini Pro for about $300. Is that something you help people with, or do you just help people with the larger, more extensive units? Who are you helping in these days?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. So we're really trying to expand on that. Right now, I have these kits, as you saw on my website, and those they're not exactly cheap. Yeah, that's a pretty big collection where someone really needs it done for you. Where I've got some cameras and lights and all the stuff is packaged up into a big old box that we ship to you, and then we help you set up remotely, or I could come in person and do it. But yeah, on the more affordable side, especially for those who are just getting started, what we're trying to get off the ground right now actually is an online course and group coaching and some other things. And so we have this, I think it's about to launch actually. It's called the 14-Day Video Startup. And in this online course, which I think it'll be paid at some point, but it won't be too expensive, but I think you can get it free right now. It's terrible that I don't know where I can send you right now to sign up for that. But other than our Instagram page, I guess is probably the best place to learn more, which is Studio Upgrade HQ. But basically on there, we'll have 14 days where we talk through all the different things. We actually don't get into the ATEM Mini in that course. I think that would maybe be an additional piece that we'll probably tack on, because that's such a deep subject. And you could spend 14 days just on that thing alone. But we're in this 14-day video startup, we really talk about the fundamentals, right? So how to set up your camera, how to place it, whatever you're using, whether it's a webcam or a DSLR.
Seems so easy, but it's not easy at all.
That's a lot.
I've been learning.
Yeah.
This has not been an easy process getting my podcast up and running. It has been so much more, because for anyone that's never done it and thinking about doing it, it always sounds like that's a great idea. And I love doing it, but it is hard. You got to prepare. You got to get used to interviewing. You have to start figuring out how to not use how to ask questions on the fly, because you can go there with all your prepared questions and then the conversation goes down a different path, and it's just not a natural to include that. So just interviewing itself is an art. And then getting the camera, the lighting. My first 5 episodes, the lighting was different in each one, because I'm just doing it as I made the mistake. I went to watch Joe Rogan's first episode and it made me cocky. I'm like, let's see what the best podcaster in the world did the first time out. And I looked at it. It was just him and I guess it's the guy who helps him. And they were doing their first podcast, and it was just, he was doing it on the fly. I'm like, well, this guy who's the world's best did it on the fly. I'm going to do it on the fly. He eventually got better. I don't know how much better I've gotten after doing about 15 of these, but there's a lot of lessons learned as you do them. And it takes a bit to get used to doing it on the fly, which you're doing everything on the fly with your buttons, your camera setup. And I'll tell you, that's the beauty of, that's really why I've been interested in talking to you, is to learn how to do it on the fly. There's so much time saved on the production piece, because I cannot stand, that's not my favorite thing, to go back and do the editing and cutting, etc. So the less editing and cutting you can do, the better, the more time you spend actually doing the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And with James Robert, we keep talking about his setup. We've actually got it set up so one of his employees can connect to his studio remotely, and she's actually able to cut the different camera angles from wherever she is. I think she lives like an hour away. So rather than driving in
Oh,
whenever
no
they're doing
kidding.
episodes, she just hops on and we set up a little remote connection so she has her own set of buttons at her computer to control the
Wow.
setup. So
So even though he's hardware based, you can control
Yeah.
all those cuts remotely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Whoa, that's
it's pretty
wild.
neat. A lot
So is
of
that
interesting.
using that same thing you have?
Yeah, so that piece of software is called Companion. That is another reason that we can do it remotely. So Companion, in its simplest form, is a piece of software that's designed for the Stream Deck. And any button you put on there, when you press a button, you can tell different actions to happen, right? More or less. And what's different about Companion versus the Stream Deck software, the Stream Deck software can control your computer. Companion runs on your computer, but controls devices on your network. And so your video switcher is a device that lives on your network. Your lighting setup could be another device that lives on your network. You could have smart plugs to turn things on and off that also live on your network. And of course, because it's controlling it over the network, the internet is what? A big network. So we've connected another controller from over the internet to this same Companion so that when we hit a button over here, it sends the button to control that thing on the network. So it's pretty neat how that works. And it is quite different than most people's approach for this kind of thing. It really, the tools that we're using are designed for live television production, right? It's the same tools,
That's what this is more
but the hardware itself has gotten so much more affordable. I remember when I worked in live television a decade ago, the stuff was insanely expensive, like really expensive. And so it's gotten a lot more, granted, it's still expensive, but it's nowhere near as expensive as it used to be. And it's what also my approach though is to take the things that used to, like when I worked in live TV, we had a director, a technical director, a producer, a person that was just on graphics. We had camera operators, all these different things. And I'm taking all those jobs and I've automated we've dialed it in enough where, okay, we know exactly what needs to happen. What's the show going to be? We need these 5 graphics. We need these lighting changes. We need these camera angles to cut back and forth between. And so when we hit one button, I can make 10, 20, 30 different things happen if necessary, so that when you hit that one button, all that stuff just happens. I can pre-program the show, if you will, into your buttons, right? So that's the unique approach that I'm taking with the setup.
Yeah, this is awesome because not only can you use this stuff during podcasts, but you could use it during webinars. You could use it during workshops. Workshops are like the big thing now. People are doing these workshops.
Oh, yeah.
Like, rather than meet with a client one-on-one, things we're doing is we're meeting with groups of clients together. So you can go over some of that repetitive stuff that, and scale it and make things more affordable by bringing a group in for a workshop. Typically in those, you need like quick access to screen share. Cause I spend a lot of my time fumbling around. I don't have an upward camera like you. So I have to take my camera off the hinge and show people what I'm doing. And that just distracts people from what we're doing. When I'm watching you here right now, like everything we've done, none of this has been pre-planned at all. Like I literally called you beforehand and you're like, dude, get on Zoom. And everything you've done so far is you've gone and shared your screen. You've showed an upright camera, all just from hitting that deck, which is mind blowing. I saw when I was with James Robert talking to him a few times and cutting a podcast episode, he showed me what he was doing, but watching you with these cameras above you to the side, I could see people using this for e-commerce, for workshops, for fitness, wellness, people who are into wellness, etc. A lot of solopreneurs. That's what we focus on here is with the podcast is solos. A lot of solos are in a range of industries and they do need to like connect with more people remote rather than being in person. And it's helping them connect at scale right now is like the biggest thing. It's like hosting more workshops online, not having to like have people drive out to your workshop, but to do them online, especially after the pandemic. Everyone's been just accustomed to the convenience of not having to get in their car and being able to just jump online and learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I'm really trying to do with that same idea, especially from the solopreneurs, is take what is traditionally seen as, oh man, to really pull this off, I have to hire somebody. I have to have someone on staff, or at least someone that I call whenever I want to make a video, whenever I want to do a podcast. If I want to do it at a professional level, it's going to, the traditional mindset is it requires me to have someone to call every time I do that, whether they're on staff or a contractor. With these setups, I've designed them in a way where, yes, it's a little bit more of an investment up front, but then it's set, it's ready to go. You run your own studio without having to then continually pay someone, right, to continue to run it. It's just there. It's ready to go.
Yeah. So at what point do you like At what point do people come in and hire you? How many, what are the indicators of like when it's time to bring in Ryan to like save the day? Is it like you record your first 10 podcasts, you say, okay, I'm good at this. This is starting to work. Let's go, let's scale it. Or does it work differently? Or is it like we've been hiring these people and we can't get everyone scheduled to come in at the same time. And we want to cut these things on the fly at any time of the day, anytime a call comes in. What are the circumstances that are making people reach out and call you for your help?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think what I always want to remind people of, and it's funny hearing this come from me, of course, because I'm trying to sell you essentially a package of gear or my services, wherever it might be. But the thing that I always say is the most important thing is just start just like you were doing, start your podcast, start your social media videos, whatever it is, with whatever you have. You just got to start doing it, because the only way to get better, because the hardware is one thing. Yes, having good cameras, good lighting, all that. But as I'm sure you've experienced too, just showing up on camera and hitting record and then not being like that takes doing it. The only way to get better at it, of course, is just by doing it. Exactly. Over and over. Exactly. When people call me, it's usually some people really want to start and say they want to start a podcast. It's a great example. I do this a lot with people who are trying to get a podcast off the ground. Maybe they have been doing something, or sometimes it's, hey, let's use James Robert. He's a perfect example. He already had his podcast and had been doing it, and he picked up some lights, but all the stuff he had been doing so far was just audio only. His podcast was only audio, even though he had some video gear. He just didn't quite feel like it was looking as good as he wanted it to. So I showed up and we built out his studio. I flew down there for a couple of days and built it out with him. And then he was able to essentially upgrade the quality of his podcast. He had already been doing it and it was a fantastic podcast, but now he was able to add professional video to it to reach more people. And then he was able to start taking those snippets of his podcast and he puts those on social media in vertical format now too. So he's repurposing his content because he has video with it. So I think the people that I help are typically those. A lot of the time, it's those who are doing stuff inside of some virtual platform like Zoom, like this, whether it's a podcast or group coaching or workshops or that type of thing. And they want to be able to, do it professionally, but a lot of times that's only half the battle. The other half is they want to turn it into content. They want to take what they're already doing, just like you and I right now. We needed to have a call and we're like, geez, let's make an episode out of this thing. Yeah.
Let's just do it on the fly.
Yeah. And so we're here. I'm here. I'm doing Zoom calls all the time. Why not do it in a way where I look good, look professional, and I could repurpose it and turn it into other bits of content. So for those who are really needing to, and I don't have time to sit down and make a bunch of other videos because I'm already doing these Zoom calls, why not just capture those? So that's the mindset. And that's usually where I can come in at some level with that, and depending on what the specific needs are, but it's really those who are busy enough or need help multiplying their time. That's a great way to think about it, right? Because I can
multiply the time.
Say the same thing once, and then I'm using it for that group coaching call, and I can extract it and turn it into a vertical video for TikTok, and I can take and post it to a long form on YouTube with just doing it once. I can get it in multiple platforms. Granted, the whole editing thing, as you've been experiencing, is a whole process in itself as well. But at least capturing it has been taken care of. And that's really what I've been helping people with.
Your main focus is the capture. Now, are you also helping people with the distribution, or is that something that once they have the capture, they already have an operation going, they've been handling their own distribution, you don't really get too involved there? Or do you give tips and advice on that as well?
Yeah, I do a lot of training, especially editing 101. So I've been running a production company, so I know a lot about. My first job was as a television editor for different news stations a long time ago. But so editing is a passion of mine that I love to teach people about and help them. Okay, how do I just take this thing and trim it down, and how do I cut out the gaps, all that kind of stuff. And so Adobe Premiere is a program that's what my company uses. A lot of people can get a little intimidated by, but another great one is CapCut, is from the same people that make TikTok, right? They have an editing program called CapCut that's free for the basic function. And then I think it's $10 a month for their pro version. And it's a really great piece of software that's really approachable. And so, we've actually done some courses on how to start editing your own stuff, how to learn some of that kind of stuff. And then I've done some coaching and consulting with people to help define a process. Okay, you've got this thing. Now, how do we really take this further and do more with it? Yeah, I'd say I've been able to do some training on that. But for the most part, What I'm really focused on, yes, is getting the studio set up so that you can at least capture it. And then there's there's so many different ways you could take your content.
So are you a solo, or do you work on your own and contract out, or do you have a full-time team? How do you work?
Yeah, we've got a team here right now in the office. We've got myself, Josh, he's my sales guy and community manager. And then Max, he's actually building some of our kits downstairs right now that we're shipping out today and tomorrow to Nashville. And then I've got a social media gal. Her name is Lissa. She's my producer, basically. She's the one that's making sure that when we need content from me, that I'm showing up on camera, and she's there to help guide and direct me. And then Max, the guy who's building the sets, he also is our editor. So the four of us, and then I have a project manager, Dana, who just started actually. She's been great. Yeah, just like last week. So the five of us now are regular day-to-day team, and then contract for bookkeeping and all that kind of stuff, of course, on the back end, behind the scenes. But yeah, it's been cool. It's been fun watching the team grow here over the last few years as well.
So how many solos do you help? What percentage of your clientele would you describe as solos?
Oh man.
Or businesses like under five or less?
Yeah, I'd say the large majority are small businesses are the large majority. And then of those, I'd say probably about half of them are solos. It's, yeah, like I explained, a lot of the people that I help specifically are those who can't afford to bring someone on staff or justify bringing someone on staff just for the video stuff. They want to be able to do it themselves, right? And the other one is I've got customers that have big teams, and their video people are so busy all the time with all the other stuff that they don't want to have to wait in order to hit record. So it's a pretty interesting mix. And this type of solution actually helps a lot of different types of people. But yeah, I'd say that solopreneur is definitely, that's been my world. When did I start this? 2012. Yeah, for the last decade now. I've been doing this small business thing. Started with 2 people. Now we're at 6, and yeah, it's quite the hustle. But I love it. Yeah.
So
it's a big spot in my heart for him.
What do you love most about the solo lifestyle, having a small business and not having to go into the corporate office, not going into the studio? You said you did some larger TV kind of projects in the past. You worked for larger companies.
Yeah.
What's the biggest benefit from this lifestyle, and then the biggest challenge? I always ask people that, and you'd be surprised. I sometimes get different answers.
I would imagine. Yeah, I would imagine you get a lot of, but I feel like I would imagine there's a common thread in this idea, which was I have a hard time working for someone else. I really did. I've always had an issue or a tough time with authority, I guess you could say, in general. But more than anything, I just learned that I wanted to be able to pursue things the way that I felt I wanted to do them. And so it wasn't quite always a good fit back when I had a job. So
now take creative risk.
Exactly. Yeah.
Take creative risk. Like that box you made is a beautiful box. Like I can't imagine, you go to a company, you have to go pitch the idea, you have to go to 5 million meetings to even get something like that done. On your own, you guys can sit there in a small team and be like, yeah, this thing's cool. We're going to put a Mac Mini in this thing. We're going to spray paint it orange or whatever you did there. That thing looked beautiful. And we're just going to ship it. And I think people who are creative and innovative, we get strangled in a larger organization. We have to go through too much red tape, and creativity just gets snuffed out. It's just brutal. And then you look like a rebel rouser or something. Yeah. You're a troublemaker in a larger organization. And I think a lot of great things come to market in startups and solopreneurship that would never have seen the light of day in a larger organization. It's getting in line, kind of stay in line. And a lot of cool stuff that happens doesn't really happen in the line.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd say that's, as I'm sure you probably hear a lot too, the challenge for me has been the clocking out, not knowing how to turn it off. It's because I love it so much, but also because if I'm responsible for it, right? So if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't get done, it's on me. And that weight it's a lot. And it's been so great, I think, to be able to build up a small team has really helped with that in general, of course, but it's still, I work a lot of hours.
That's the thing with soloing. Like you don't have a boss, but you don't necessarily always get more free time every time because of that thing. It does rely on you at the end of the day, and you allow it to become a labor of love and do what you love doing. So you probably put a lot of your heart and soul into the product and service that you render.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, what advice do you have for other solos?
I think my mentor is Rene Rodriguez. He's the guy that kind of really helped me see this whole thing, this market as an opportunity. Amplify is his thing, AMPLIFII. And he's got a great book, Amplify Your Life, all kinds of stuff. Check out his website is Learn with Rene, meetrene.com, something like that. Learn with Rene is his handle. He's got great content on TikTok and Instagram. But anyway, he had said this thing about, I think the word he used was integration when it comes to
amplifymylife.com.
Thank you. Yeah. A lot of people think about work-life balance, right? And I've always had a hard time trying to ever find balance. And a lot of people have a lot of different perspectives on this. But one thing that Rene said at one point was that for him, balance was never really achievable, but instead what he strives for was integration. And so I've really tried to start doing that with myself, is finding ways that I can incorporate my family into some of the work and some of the projects that I'm doing. So in my world, I'm traveling a lot to build these studios in different parts of town. And so I've just gone out of my way now to make sure that I'm booking trips in a way where it's like, hey, Dana, my wife, Dana, you want to come to Nashville? So this week we're going to Nashville for a couple studios, and she's going to help me with it. She does some basic stuff that she doesn't mind helping me out with. And it's great. Of course, it's nice to be able to write a trip off, as well as just get to spend some time with my wife, where, we don't have the 3 kids running around, all that kind of stuff. And so that's been something but I had to be intentional about it. I had to start looking for those opportunities rather than just what it used to be is, sorry, I'm traveling again. I've got another studio to build. And so why don't I just start thinking about changing the way that I approach some of these things? So
and get some references while you're down there to build some more. Go to Nashville.
Yeah,
again.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's a great trip, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun.
That's a sweet one. Yeah. So yeah, man, you got a Nashville blues hat on there, man. You look like you're ready. You look like you're ready for the music scene.
Oh gosh, yeah, I've been a musician my entire life, and there's something really special. Yeah, I've been playing piano since I was like 6, and then I've been a drummer since 5th grade, so a long time. Percussion's my main gig, and
oh wow, you're gonna have a
lot of performing. Oh yeah, I love Nashville and so many great music cities, of course.
And where are you from?
I'm from here in St. Paul. My office is in St. Paul, Minnesota, but I was born in North Minnesota. Brainerd is a couple hours north of the cities here, and I don't know. There's no snow here yet. Which is surprising. Usually by now we've got at least a foot or 2 of snow, but it's just been cold this year so far. But yeah, I love it here. And every winter though, it's why do we like it here again?
I'm like that
but
too,
I think it's because of the cold, we appreciate and enjoy the summer even more. I think is
got to go for a little bit of winter hell for a little bit of summer heaven, huh?
Exactly.
I know, absolutely. Man. I love that. I love that thaw in the spring, man. It's get me the hell out of winter as soon as possible. But that's awesome that you've been able to integrate your business with your personal life to be able to be the person who has the studio in St. Paul, who can leave St. Paul in the winter and go and do these things. I think that's one of the greatest things about being solo is you get to make those calls where you might not get
exactly
in a larger organization. You can't say, send me here for the next gig.
Yeah.
And I couldn't say, here for the next gig.
Can you pay to bring my wife? Like she's going to help, I promise. What? That's the kind of decision I can make as an owner, but it wouldn't happen as an employee. Yeah, for sure.
Ryan, this has been a pleasant surprise to actually get an episode off here. It started out as a phone call and to see what you do. And I'm so glad you said, hey, knucklehead, call me up. I need to do this on Zoom. I need to show you what I do. And then we're like, all right, let's record an episode. Let's try it on the fly. So people how
there we go.
A total amateur and noob like me too. For anyone watching this, I only have about 15 of these recorded so far. And this man's a pro here. He just came on and just start hitting buttons, and you can show people again how you just did that. But
basically having this paddle buttons right here, right, where I could cut between the different angles, have my name pop up, all kinds of different stuff, and change in the background if I want to have paint chunks instead of
time for editing too.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest thing is I can do it live rather than trying to edit it all together.
Do it live. The famous do it live.
Get the cameras. Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Ryan. Pleasure having you.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Thanks again.
Sweet. Yeah, no problem.
All right.